Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about the recent issue in regards to the Chinese spy balloon that had flew over the United States for about 5 to 6 days, and I'm going to discuss the reason as to why this happened. So if you watch any type of news, you'd have just seen that the Chinese spy balloon was just shot down off the coast of South Carolina just a couple of days ago. This spy balloon had arrived from China, and it was seen actually on January 28th, and then it was spotted on February 1st in Billings, Montana. So if you watch many of these news channels like CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC, you see many of their political commentators and pundits come into some form of either anger or confusion or hysteria in some ways over this balloon. And while the question is, why is the balloon here? No one, from what I have observed, have really gave any logical explanation for this balloon. And I'm going to give my answer as to why. And before I do, I just want to say that I am not a geopolitical strategist or military analyst. I'm just a normal guy that has observed these issues between the United States and China for roughly 9 to 10 years now. So for the recent decade, the United States and China's relationship has been strained due to a number of issues, two being human rights and the other being the treatment of minorities. Both of these issues, the United States has accused China of mishandling tremendously. And the third issue, which is the issue that kind of ties in with the balloon, is the problem with Taiwan. Currently, Taiwan does operate its own government and sees itself separate from China. And the United States supports this, and China does not. And before we get more into this, I think it's important to bring about the history of Taiwan. We'll go through a little crash course here, and I will explain how this kind of led to today and why we are seeing these problems. So around at the end of the 19th century, China and Taiwan were under the administration of the Qing Manchu-led dynasty. And at the end of this year of 1895, Japan had invaded China, like many other countries such as the United Kingdom and France, and took a part of China's territory, that territory being Taiwan. China dubbed this century of losing their territory as the century of humiliation. Unfortunately, the Qing Empire, again, under the government administration of the Manchu-led dynasty, was corrupt and militarily inept. So around 1912, the people were fed up with this administration, and the Qing dynasty was removed from power, and the Republic of China was established. So fast forward to the end of World War II, where Japan was defeated by the Allied powers. Japan had to give up Taiwan and many other parts of its empire. So Taiwan went back to the Republic of China. Unfortunately, during these times, civil war had ensued between the Communist Forces of China, known as the PRC, and the Republic of China, known as the ROC. So if we fast forward to the 1950s, the Communist Forces had beaten the Nationalists being the Republic of China, and most of the Nationalists had fled to Taiwan, and that is where they established their own independent entity, if you will. What also happened then was the Korean War, and a lot of hostility started to happen between China and the U.S. Of course, the People's Republic of China was communist, and those in the Republic of China were not communist at all. They were under authoritarian rule. But the United States, as we all know, and the West are very much opposed to communism, and they're extremely hostile again towards the Soviet Union, who also practiced communism. So it made the most sense to support Taiwan during these times, the ROC. So small skirmishes did happen across the Taiwan Strait with the United States supporting Taiwan, as I said earlier. So these antagonistic views towards one another is not new. They've been happening over the past few decades now. Of course, they have been escalating more up to this point, which is scary a little bit to maybe a lot of people, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So before I fast forward to the current time, one last thing I wanted to go over was the change to democracy, which happened around 1996 when the people of Taiwan were able to elect their first president. So Taiwan going from authoritarian rule under a dictatorship to democracy um, showed to the West and obviously to the United States that Taiwan should be supported at all costs. Of course, the United States does recognize the one China policy, in which both the United States and the United Nations recognize the PRC as the sole legitimate government of China. It's also important to add that the other reason as to why the U.S. is bent on defending Taiwan is that Taiwan is the largest producer of semiconductors, microchip companies. Currently, the U.S. is working on building their own microchip semiconductor companies, I believe in Arizona. But right now, Taiwan is the largest producer of these microchips. And so now let's fast forward to this 2010 era, maybe a few years after the 2010. And the United States is starting to recognize China more as some sort of threat. And there's many reasons to that, as I've explained, the issue with Taiwan, the fact that China practices an entirely different government system that the United States does. Of course, China is known as being communist, which, again, as I've said, the United States and the West strictly oppose. So now we see China as being only second to none. They have the second best economy in the world, right after the United States. They most likely have the second best military in the world as well, after the U.S. If we were watching the calamity happen between Russia and Ukraine, Russia is still having its ongoing war with Ukraine. Again, Ukraine has a population of like 30 something million people, and Russia has a population of 140 million. They have a bigger economy and a bigger military than Ukraine, and they are still having this war with them. Of course, it can be argued that, yes, the United States and the West is supplying Ukraine with weapons. But I would say that probably after this year, it would be fair to say that China probably has the second best military. Russia was seen as second best, but those times have changed. So again, China is starting to flex its military might. Again, I had brought up the skirmishes between Taiwan and China in those earlier decades, but now, again, the United States has said that it would protect Taiwan, or go to defend Taiwan. And every time that we see the United States fly its planes around Taiwan near the Taiwan Strait, China does the same thing. They very much view the United States' commitment to defending Taiwan as a threat to its sovereignty. They view Taiwan inherently as their own. The population of 1.4 billion people are taught at a very early age that Taiwan is a part of their history. It is a part of their country. If we go back to last year, the former Speaker of the House in the United States, Nancy Pelosi, had flown to Taiwan to reassure the president and the people of Taiwan that they would support their democracy. This was against China's request that they did not have Nancy Pelosi fly to Taiwan to do this. And in response, China formed a blockade around Taiwan, naval blockade, for a few days. This is a very serious action that China took. Again, whatever the United States does, or Japan for that matter, in terms of showing any form of serious support for Taiwan, China has responded through either their blockade or flying their fighter jets around Taiwan. So recently, as in a couple of weeks ago, the United States and the Philippines governments had agreed on opening 9 bases in the northern part of the Philippines to the United States military. Now, what does that mean? Of course, the Philippines and China have their own territorial disputes in the west part of the Philippines. The Philippines sees that the islands that they view as theirs were taken and now are militarized by China. But if you read some of these news articles, these bases aren't really disclosed. and they are only said that they're in the northern part of the Philippines in the region of Luzon. Now, what lies north of the Philippines? It's Taiwan. Taiwan is not very far away from the Philippines if you look on the map. And China, again, I believe views this as a threat. That actually responded to this agreement as a provocation. So you only have to watch ABC, MSNBC, Fox News, or CNN, and when they talk about China, they discuss war simulations on what a war with the US and China would look like over Taiwan. And these pundits and commentators discuss this island chain strategy in which is used to contain China. For example, the first island chain, which is technically Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, which all encircle China. And there's already bases in Japan. And now we are discussing these bases in the Philippines as well. And then, of course, Taiwan going against China. So these types of simulations, again, are somewhat normalized to the public by these mainstream outlets. So, fast forward to the spy balloons, right? China responded to the agreements by flying this balloon over the United States. Now, why would China fly a balloon? Something so obvious to see, right? And this is where my own opinion comes in, and I believe that China flew this balloon not just in response to the bases agreements in the Philippines, but also it was to test the United States response, the American public's response, and the government's response, the military response. Again, this balloon was spotted in Montana near missile silos. So this is actually kind of the more terrifying part of this, because this is a very brazen move by China. Normally, they respond, as I said before, through flying their jets near Taiwan or somewhat close to Japan. So yes, this is pretty much what I wanted to discuss and just get my opinion out there. And I think we'll see more of this story, and as it unravels, as we all know, the balloon was shot down, and currently parts of the balloon and of the satellite connected to the balloon are in government hands, American government hands. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a like or a comment. You're more than welcome to. And if you also enjoyed and you're new, please feel free to subscribe. And I look forward to making more content for you all as usual. And thank you for watching.